Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Keep the Line Moving, the podcast designed to talk about leadership, life, and inspiration. I am your host, Chris Gargano. And guess what? Our guest this week was a high school classmate of Olympic star Mary Lou Retton. We will talk about that. But our focus is on Jennifer Tombaugh's career, how she became the president of Tauck, which is a family-owned travel company focused on 150 guided premium travel experiences on land, small ship, and river cruises. Tauck has been a travel and leisure world's best winner for more than 20 years. Jennifer will talk about her career and how she became the president of Tauck in 2011. Her career is fascinating. Her philosophy towards servant leadership and how she united the company through COVID. Remember, travel was changing on an hourly basis. Jennifer will take us behind the scenes of what those meetings were like. And they have rebuilt. They're hiring now. She will tell us what she looks for in an ideal candidate. And of course, she will analyze what it means to be a great company in a very competitive industry. Our conversation begins now with Jennifer Tombaugh. Let's tell your story, Jennifer. So you go to Harvard, you get an MBA. Tell us what you were like as a college student. Then obviously we'll dive into your leadership career because I can't wait to hear about it.
Sure. My college and my business school career really was one of trying to be open and learning. I will tell you, I grew up in West Virginia, Fairmont, West Virginia. Some of you might remember Mary Lou Retton, the gold medalist. She was a classmate of mine in high school, and so I. We were very much a tight, happy community with high energy, just like we try to all be like Mary Lou. And then I went to Harvard, and had gone from a very big fish in a very small pond to a sort of a minnow in an enormous pond, and I was very overwhelmed. And I thought I was strong academically, and then I realized in my first day of math class that they had covered everything that I'd ever learned. And it was a terrifying experience, and it took me a long time, probably a couple of years, to really sort of find my footing. And yet, what continued to give me confidence and bearing was getting involved and meeting people and learning that one of the skills and talents that I was trying to cultivate and I found myself better at was the ability to network and be with people and adopt sort of those natural sort of leadership skills where I did okay in the classroom. I wasn't, the top student, but I found other ways that I could sort of find my personality and find my way through. And I think after college, and I was an English and American literature major, so I'm a big proponent of the humanities, and I will always continue to be. It serves me well every single day. I went on into management consulting, which was sort of the fashionable thing to do at the time. I worked for a great company called Monitor Company, and again, not the top consultant there, but had this ability to sort of learning ability to work with a team and build a cohesive team. And I learned a ton in that. So in going into business school, I actually felt pretty confident about my business skills, maybe with the exception of finance, which hasn't always been my strong suit, but particularly in marketing and understanding consumer needs. And that was always what my passion was, is understanding how people tick and what drives them and why do they behave the way that they do. And I guess I've learned that through that journey, right? Um, as it just so happens, my job in college, who knew, was because I needed a job, I had to make money, was to work for our student-run business called Harvard Student Agencies. And I decided that I would get a job, and I applied for and unfortunately got a job as a travel agent at the front desk, where we sold Eurail passes and backpacks. And some of those listeners who might be older will remember the Let's Go Travel series, which was all written by Harvard students, and we would send those research writers out. So who knew that years later, decades later, I would actually be running a travel company? That I never thought that would all come into bear, but I had some management skill there. But from business school with that and with my consumer insight, I thought, oh, I want to do project management, or I want to get into really understanding consumer needs. But my path actually took me to in consumer packaged goods, and I was at Coke, and then at my husband, then boyfriend at the time, moved to Taiwan to work for another classmate. And so I ended up in advertising and Leo Burnett in Taipei, Taiwan. And then when we moved back, I thought, what do I really love? And maybe there was something about that college experience that bubbled up that said, let's get back into travel.
So, what a wonderful story, a wonderful foundational story. Mary Lou Retton, all the way to getting to Harvard, and I'll revisit the Mary Lou in a minute, but getting to Harvard, and you said something that I really want to appeal back, if I may. They knew more, they gave you more information than you had learned your entire life, right up to that point. However, you were able to see what you were interested in, and you mentioned it later in describing your history, which was understanding human psychology and how people moved and worked and interrelated to one another. How was that realization? Was it a gradual, or were you in an English class one day or some sort of humanity class, as you said, and
Yeah.
said, wow, this is fascinating? Or was it something that was gradual?
I think that aha moment really came at Monitor Company, because what I found myself enjoying the most was the consumer research and the interviews, both in person, in groups, and also quantitative discussion driven conclusions that we would come up with. And that I always found fascinating. Like, how do people make decisions? What's on their minds? What's the priority? How does that change? And that's what got me into consumer packaged goods, and obviously thinking about Coca-Cola, because there's a lot of different companies. I remember interviewing for them, and I thought what fascinated me about Coke and a lot of image brand companies is that people aren't buying, they're not buying it because it's fizzy water. They're buying it because of the image and what it conveys. And it was the and you see that so much now today with how people want to display themselves. And I found all of that really intriguing, and still do today, is what is it about the human psyche that causes us to behave and act in certain ways? What do we want to project about ourselves versus who we are? And how do marketers help close that gap for people?
Let's give the folks what you do now. Describe your role right now, and you've been at Tauck since 2001 and 2011 in your current position. Tell everybody what your job entails. When you wake up in the morning, what's top of mind?
Right. So the good news is now what's top of mind as president of Tauck, and I will say Tauck is for context, let me answer it this way. Tauck is a family-run business. Sorry, family-owned business. So we're third generation moving into the fourth family-owned, and the family is committed to that long-term family ownership. I am not a family member. So I was the first non-family president. And so that brings with it a lot of interesting dynamics and experiences. And I love the Tauck family, and they're super supportive. And the good news is that now every day I can wake up and think about things that are really meaningful about driving growth. And that is caring for our guests. What is our product experience like? Are there any issues out there that we need to address, from not only just what we're delivering on tour, but that whole, from the moment you start thinking about travel until the end, and how can we reach more people to delight them with our product. There is just the overall growth. We've been around for nearly 100 years now, and so we know travel is exploding. What are the new trends and ideas? I mean, that's the discussion that we have at our board meeting next week, is where do we go from here, and what do our next 100 years look like? So that's really a lot of the thinking that I have. But the other thing that's very important to Tauck and to me is our culture. And I wake up every morning thinking about our people, and how do we keep them engaged, and how do we imbue the sense of purpose across our team. And that's acutely important now coming out of COVID, because let me tell you, the last 3 years have probably been the most challenging of my entire professional career. We went in February of 2020 from having the most successful year in the history of the company in 2019. We had had our board meeting. We walked out of there. We had record revenues, record profit, record employee engagement, record guest engagement. I mean, we hit it out of the park. 6 weeks later, we shut the company down for the first time since World War II. And we, over the course of the next 6 months, laid off half of our staff. And we were constantly trying to find out, how can we get going again? And so that was a lot about, I mean, I looked at more cash flow statements and, uh, employee decisions, and just awful, difficult policies and needs and requirements, it was really, really challenging. And so it's a delight now to wake up every day and know, okay, we're back, but now we have all these new people. How do we make sure that they get it, that they understand our purpose about delight, changing people's lives through travel? And how do we imbue that sense of purpose, and how do I get to know them, and how do I make the personal connection that's so important to me, and how do we make sure that people feel engaged and involved so they can deliver great experiences for our guests? And so and then keep growing our reach and our awareness so that we can affect more guests and do more good in the world.
How did you, as the leader of the company, maneuver and understand and listen to your employees as you were navigating COVID? Now, all of us want to make COVID a distant memory, right? But the
Yes,
learning that you take from any
yeah,
experience like that is so valuable. So I don't want to harp on it, and I don't want to relive, the
yeah, yeah.
unpleasant memories. But how did you, as the president, navigate that very difficult time on a daily basis?
It's a great question, and it was. I will tell you, very early on, I think it was like April of 2020. Harvard Business School put out this webinar, and I was listening to every webinar I could possibly, because we were all trying to understand what to do. And it was about how to deal with novel crises. And what I will never forget it, because there were, I don't know, 5 or 6 thousand people on the webinar. And the professor got up, he said, "What is happening now has never happened. And so there is no answer." And I'm the kind of person that always felt bad, like, I need to know the answer. I need to know the answer, and I can't solve the answer. And it was the most liberating thing for someone to say, there is no answer. So I thought, okay, we don't have to solve for anything. We just have to figure it out. So it was total greenfield. But he said the most important thing that you can do is understand and be core to your values. Try things. Some of them are going to work, some of them aren't. Learn from that, come back and then validate the next idea again. Are you being true to your values? And that was the best counsel that we had going through that. What we did almost immediately is our executive team, which was myself, our CEO, our CFO, our chief operations officer, and our chief culture officer. We started meeting every single day, except I think we gave ourselves Sunday off. And every day for, I think, 2 years for an hour, we would meet. And then we would have other team meetings. Zoom was a savior. Thank goodness for that. When we could start going into the office, we asked, we started to try and see one another again. We did virtual. The other thing I did was, and I remember a colleague of mine at the time said to me as I was walking out the door the day I had my go bag, when we told everybody, we'll be get back in the office in a couple weeks, just take your computer and your laptop and your go bag with you. So,
Right.
you should do a blog, because people are going to have a lot of questions, and uh, they're not going to know how to get a hold of you, and they're not going to know how to ask them. So I started that, which I still do today, because actually people still read it, which is stunning to me. But I write. It was everything from, here are the types of decisions we're trying to make today, or here are the questions that we have, or here's what the latest is that we know about border, because every single day the situation across travel changed. So some borders were open, some requirements changed literally every day, and sometimes multiple times a day for 2 years. One country would open and then the other country would close. And so how can we operate when we could finally do that again? So communication was key. It was communication through Zoom, through our teams, and through our executive leadership in getting aligned. And that was not just sharing information. After a while, and I think a lot of us felt this through COVID, I'm sure you did, or others perhaps listening did too, is it became a support network where, when we were going through our third round of layoffs, I remember our CEO asking me, like, "Are you okay?" And I sort of, I'm not a very emotional person at work other than being enthusiastic. And I really got teary, and I'm like, I don't think I can do this anymore. I mean, when it's talking about the people that are so core to who we are. And it was, I kept hearing about all these problems other industries are having. Like, nobody understands what's really happening in travel. I mean, that supports, 1 in 10 jobs globally. So in any case, communication with our team, communication with our employees. We kept our Wednesday town halls and the first of them were me speaking into a camera with no audience. And then we finally figured out how to use Zoom to do a sort of an audience. And so then we could finally see people's faces. And that was such a relief. And then we were able to finally bring people together. So it was a lot of just iterative, and everyone, we had this pact that we're all going to be candid. We're all going to share whatever we know. None of us know the answers, and everybody just has to come to the table with whatever information that we have so we can make informed decisions together.
You mentioned something that was very interesting, and that was wonderful to hear. And that was a master class right there on leadership, especially through a crisis, right? But you said that your leadership team, you became support for one another, right? Has that extended into modern day, meaning post COVID? A lot of times, we got together, we really rallied and took care of one another. And then obviously, if you read about leadership in today's society, everybody's hoping and trying to do their part, in an idealistic viewpoint to keep that, that nurturing and that mentoring and that teaching and that taking care of one another. Have you kept that? And how crucial do you think that is if you've kept it, or do you want to do it even better?
We're certainly trying. And that, again, look, I think anytime, there are some silver linings of COVID. And anytime you're faced with a crisis, you get through it by, as Dan, our CEO, said, kind of being in the foxhole with somebody. And that metaphor, fundamentally at the core of all of those, whether they're sports analogies or war analogies or whatever they are, is trust. And I think there's often a common misperception when people show up at work that you have to have this persona of formality. And that's true. I mean, it depends on what form you're in, and you have to be sensible about how you're presenting yourself. But I guess I've found that the best relationships I've built and the best successes that I've had have been ones where not only you come to the table, intellectually prepared, professionally prepared, you do a good job, you do your homework, but you share a little bit about yourself and you share that vulnerability. And I think the more you open yourself up to someone and really try to understand who the person is that you're speaking to and what their needs are, it's true for any like negotiation or that sort of thing, but you just build trust. That candor invites trust. And so that to me is how you build a great culture. It's how you build great relationships, and it's the end of the day how you do great business. And that sense of integrity, of trust, of candor, of being true to yourself, but listening carefully to others is something that I continue to strive for. I think our team does continue to strive for. Of course, could we do things better? Of course. I mean, this is all we're all a work in process. You never quite at an end station, but that served me well, and I think it continues to serve the company well. So I will say that the only thing I hated, and I still don't like today about my job, is when I got the title of president, because all of a sudden people stopped talking to me. They stopped telling me what necessarily all the things that were on their mind, and sort of I started to get a filtered version. And one of the things I try really, really hard to do is to continue, as we did through COVID, holding monthly lunches, reaching out and double checking on the phones and meeting some of our newer reservation sales counselors, trying to get out in the field, just hearing what's on the hearts and minds of our team, because then you hear what's on the hearts and minds of our guests, and you're able to serve them better. So as I always say, I can't solve a problem I don't know about. And I don't have a political agenda. I just want to, make it better for our team, and therefore better for our guests.
So people don't talk to you as much, and I understand that completely. And I've heard that from other leaders, right? That I get the title now, and the relationship has changed with somebody that I was, maybe go to lunch with or happy hour or whatever the case may be. How do you disarm them? Is that a conscious decision by you, or your natural disposition, if I may, seems very relaxed and open? You have a very seemingly wonderful relationship with your ego because you're the president. You've been a president since 2011, which is a tremendous accomplishment, and I love that. However, how do you disarm people? Do you throw humor at them? Do you ask them questions? Is it a combination of everything, or is it just a natural aura that you give, like, "Hey, I'm just still Jennifer," right?
Well, thank you. I try. I do really try. A lot of it, as I said, I think it's about being vulnerable. I just sometimes forget how people perceive me, and I'll give you an example. So this is a really fun, and I'm very relaxed. I'm really enjoying this conversation, Chris. Last week, I had to do 20 back-to-back 2 or 3 minute TV and radio interviews where you're answering 3 questions in 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, I like talking. I'm never, never completely comfortable, but I enjoy public speaking. I can always be better at that too. But that was terrifying. And because you have all your talking points that you're trying to get across and you're trying to be succinct and engaging. And I'd never done that before and it was pretty stressful. So I wrote about that in my blog. And someone came up to me the next day and said, "I can't believe you were nervous. That makes me feel so much better because I I get nervous." And all at once he started telling me about this acting class that he started to take to try and make himself feel more confident as a presenter. And so, I think it's again, you share some personal anecdotes and experiences, and you realize we're all human. And I think as being a mom too, and I'm very open. This week was Prize Day and lacrosse end of year party and this party and got to do this and I've got to leave early and I'm really sorry, but I'm going to be on later tonight. And I think just being open about the reality, and I think Dan Mahar is our CEO. I think he sets the stage. We are a family-owned company. The family and also has that demeanor, and they've always preached servant leadership, humility, and I try every day to embody that. And every now and then I'll catch myself kind of getting like, all right, well, I did that. And I need to say, Jennifer, stop. It's not about you, it's about the team and it's what we're trying to build. And so it's a hope, and I'm delighted if it works. It's a hope that by being more vulnerable or sharing some personal stories, people will feel more comfortable opening up and talking to.
It's that self-awareness, Jennifer. It's that wonderful self-awareness that you keep alluding to in different ways, right? And being vulnerable. I absolutely appreciate that and love that you've brought that forward. Some of the wisdom that you've shared with us today is just so valuable. How do you mentor young leaders? How do you mentor somebody who wants to be a leader or you see high potential? What are those conversations like? And I'm sure you take those extremely seriously in seeing value in people that can add value to Tauck.
Yes, I try very hard at work. As I said, I run a monthly lunch, and I ask. It's open. It's to ask any question. I talk for 10 or 15 minutes about what the pulse is of the company, and and some of the questions that or issues that we're grappling with, and then I just open it to questions. And every lunch, I've been doing this now for 10 years. Gosh, 10 years. I've been doing this for 10 years, and every conversation is different, and we talk from everything from sustainability to parenting to how we can make experiences coming to work every day or working with our remote staff more engaging. And so I'm hoping that sometimes through those responses and just that dialogue, I can teach and instruct. We are working towards putting a more formal mentorship program together, but a lot of it is also we tend to be a very collaborative company by virtue of what we do. And my hope is that in providing some feedback or coaching, when I see someone doing a great job, I always write an email, or I shouldn't say always, I try very hard to write an email to acknowledge that. And I specifically speak to whatever the behavior was that I saw or the deliverable that happened to acknowledge. So it's more than, hey, you're awesome. It's more, here are the things that you did that I was really impressed by. And I know this had this impact on our guests, and I'm really grateful. So I try really hard in that way to emphasize those things. And then if something really goes off the rails, depending on the situation, obviously, I'll either offer that feedback myself or go through that person's manager if that's more appropriate, depending on the situation. But look, and everything we do as leaders, right? We also just try to lead by example. And I remember also going to another webinar years ago where somebody said, "You just don't realize how many people watch what you do." And again, that really hit me during COVID. Before we had made the decision to shut the office in those early days in March, I remember walking to get a cup of coffee or something in our kitchen, and someone was watching me, and I said, "Hey, you okay?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm just seeing you're smiling, so I know it's okay." And it was again one of those reminders. And I am conscious of this. When I leave my desk, I sort of have to have a game face on, and when I'm out on the road, I have to have a game face on. And I'm not trying to mislead anyone, but I know people are studying me, and I want to make sure that I'm conveying the proper emotion.
Wonderful. So we have talked about people who you mentor. We've talked about your executive team. Now let's talk about the customer. If I wanted a travel package with Tauck, and I'm starting today, and I have your website right here. tell me what I should do to maximize the wonderful offerings that you have.
So this is the beauty of it, because you really don't have to do much except figure out which trip is most appealing to you and give us a call. So everything we do is guided, and everything we do is packaged. So unlike a travel agent, and we do sell through travel agents who say, if I want to go 5 days to Italy and I want to do this kind of experience, and they'll put something together for you that's customized. What we do is create an itinerary that we run dozens and dozens, and if not hundreds, if not thousands, depending on which program it is, times, and we perfect it. And we're always looking at how to make it better and better still. But that experience and that feedback loop allows us to raise the bar and provide great access to experiences people can't easily get on their own. And I'll do it at delivering great value. I mean, we're negotiating for 2025 right now, right? So a lot, and our pricing is locked in. So all of these inflationary fluctuations and currency challenges, that's all already baked into we set our prices and our experiences way before all that happens. So you get what you get, and you don't have to keep reaching into your pocket. So for me, I will tell you, one of the reasons I specifically booked this program, Cowboy Country, even myself, is we had great summer plans for the kids and the whole family, and for a number of different reasons those fell through at the end of June. And I'm looking at two 14-year-olds that I don't want on their phones for 2 weeks, and I don't have the time to put a summer camp schedule together for those to fill in that new spot. I made one phone call, and the three of us are going to go out and explore the Grand Tetons and Yellowstone, and get to Cody and the rodeo, and be on a ranch and have a private experience and meet with experts and real ranch hands and learn how to rope cattle and all of that, and end up at Mount Rushmore all in a week, all taken care of. And so you can just be present, and you don't have to worry about anything, because we're the ones that are worrying for everything for you. So truly, whether it's on river or a small ship or any of our land programs, we're in 7 continents and 70 countries. It's one phone call, and we'll take care of it for you.
Okay, are you ready for rapid fire? Let's do some rapid fire to close it
Go
out.
for it. Okay.
Sound good? Okay, this is first thought, best thought. Ready? All right, here we go.
All right, here we go.
How do you deal with adversity?
Smile, engage, listen.
Love it. And these are all-star moments, by the way. Okay, number 2, how do you give yourself fuel?
Friendships, people, relationships, and yoga.
Okay. What does never give up mean to you?
My life belief.
Awesome. What is the value of collaboration?
Priceless.
What do you look for in a candidate, a potential hire?
Empathy, enthusiasm, persistence, curiosity.
Oh, I love that last one. Why do I always ever editorialize? I just love it. All right, I'm supposed to have rapid fire here, and I editorialize. All right, here we go. Number 6, describe yourself as a leader in one sentence.
Hopes to be a servant leader, always delivering excellent results.
Love it. And number 7, what was it truly like to have a classmate named Mary Lou Retton?
Inspiration and intimidation. She is an extraordinary woman. I'm going off rails here. She is an extraordinary woman who embodied, I think, everything that my little small town was about. And her big smile made us so very proud, and her accomplishments of showing, she showed what a little girl from a small town can do. And I think gave us all incredible hope and belief. And I admire her deeply.
I'll tell you what, I bet your hometown is very proud of you as well.
Well, thank you. It was a great place to grow up.
Awesome. Jennifer, this was tremendous. Thank you so much. This was so much fun. Thank you. I've loved this conversation.
Me too. This was a lot of fun. I really honored to be on your show. I hope something that I said was useful to someone. And I wish you all the best.
And we thank Jennifer very much for being on the show. My number one takeaway is this. You heard Jennifer. She said, when I got the title of president, people didn't open up to me as much. They were more reserved. So how did she combat that or navigate that? She said she was more informal, inviting people to come in, asking them questions, being vulnerable herself so they would then open up to her. And she was very eloquent in that. And I could sense that that means a lot to her, having a two-way communication that is consistent throughout the company. We thank Jennifer very much. I really enjoyed that conversation. Hope you did as well. For our podcast producer, Paul Salazar, I am Chris Gargano. Have a great week, everybody. We promise to bring you a great guest next week. And thank you for being loyal to Keep the Line Moving.
We thank you for listening to Keep the Line Moving. We would love it if you subscribed or left a review. For more podcast episodes, check out our YouTube page. If you'd like to work with the Gargano Leadership Group, check out our website. This has been a GLG production, copyright 2023. For our podcast producer, Paul Salazar, and our marketing coordinator, Savin Narwal. Have a great week, everyone.